Welcome to SuperTalk, the podcast that scratches your superhero itch. Just two suburban dads nerding out over superhero stuff on the small screen and the big. Buckle up, people. Enjoy the ride.
Welcome to SuperTalk, the podcast dedicated to news and reviews of comic book media on the big and small screen. This is episode 158. I'm your host, Brian Professor Pedersen. With me, as always, my illustrious co-host, the titanium one himself, Tony Estrella.
There's no time for pleasantries. We got so much to fucking cover. There's no time for pleasantries.
There goes the parental warning on the podcast.
Oh yeah, did I cuss? My bad.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I mean, it's been a couple weeks since our last episode. Apologize to the listeners and viewers for the delay. We have a ton to review today. Most pointedly, the major casting announcement by Marvel in regard to an upcoming project, which we will cover in depth. But let's get into it. Let's start with a little bit of a recap review of a couple of the television series that we're watching at the moment. Since our last episode, we got the season finale of Invincible, episode 8. It was what the entire season has been leading up to, the arrival of Conquest. And it seemed, I mean, I don't know about your perspective on this, but like episode 7 was such a great episode. It was the Invincible War, and it was like incredible. And then at the end of episode 7, they teased Conquest coming to Earth. And I'm like, this poor kid, man, he just got done like saving the world from all these variants of himself. And now he's got to fight this, Viltrumite, who's theoretically the strongest and most seasoned and most brutal Viltrumite of them all.
Thong, or I think the leader is
Thrag.
Thrag. He's the strongest.
Thong, is that it?
Thong, yeah. He's actually distracting as he kicks your ass. He's very distracting.
Thrag, I believe, yeah. But
Thrag, he's probably the strongest.
Well, actually, Conquest said in this episode that he's so brutal and doesn't follow orders and doesn't listen to anybody that they basically just send him on these missions and let him just
devour,
destroy things because he's
become second nature to him.
Oh yeah, he's very old, so he's been doing it for a very long time. And I mean, what a battle! I mean, the two of them, were going head to head, and Mark was holding his own, even and Conquest was messing with him a little bit, I think, in the beginning, and then. Of course, we knew this was going to happen. Oliver shows up, gets involved. Mark tries to tell him not to. He gets seriously injured.
Yeah.
Mark gets pissed off, starts fighting better.
Yeah.
Then ultimately Eve shows up.
She gets hurt.
She gets involved. Actually, she helps out a lot to begin with. But then, Conquest basically kills her. I mean, for all intents and purposes, he, disembowels her. I mean, he shoves his fist through her midsection and she is dead, and Mark watches her die.
Well, Eve is a lot stronger than everybody forgets that she is. That short that she was in, like her origin story kind of short, showed you that her powers are pretty extensive.
Well, I think that's the story of her, is that if she was completely unchecked, she is likely one of the most powerful beings in the universe. I mean, she has a mental block that was placed on her that prevents her from manipulating organic matter. So for the most part, she can change any inorganic matter into anything that she wants.
Right.
But there's a mental block that prevents her from
exceeding that power.
Right. From using that power. And that's why she can't just turn a person into a brick, But
she did turn an apple into a gold apple at one point.
Yeah, right.
I remember that episode. I tell you, this episode, Professor, was absolutely fantastic. I mean, to close out this series, this television series, the way they did was great. I'm looking forward to the next season of Invincible. I just think it's really good. Again, as I've always said, you know me, my rating for shows. Animation starts only at a certain level. I think Dave Portnoy, when he grades pizza, if it's what is it? If it's some type of pizza, he starts it at a certain level. Well, that's me with animation. It has to start. It's not live action, but it's right up there as one of the best animated
Neapolitan
shows.
pizza.
Neapolitan,
It can only be a 7.6. 7.6 is the highest
the
a
highest you
Neapolitan
can
can
be.
be.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the way I feel about animation shows. But if this is an animation show that I have to rank, it's one of the top because it's just great. It's the characters are so involved,
Yeah,
I'm so in.
the story's great.
Yeah, the
The
stories.
writing and the writing and the voice acting, and I mean everything's just really well done. And they have a ton of story left to tell. I think they probably have enough material. If they wanted to stretch it out, they have enough material to go for another 3 seasons. And again, they have been stretching it out to some extent. They're about halfway through the entire comic book series right now, and there's a ton more for them to cover.
That's great.
So we'll see. And again, one of the things about
how closely are they following the comic book?
Very closely, with some minor exceptions. Like I said, Mark's mom is not as prevalent in the comic books as she is on the animated show. And so everything you see with Debbie and her boyfriend and all these other things, that's all filler stuff that they're doing to extend the show. But the storyline is pulled directly from the books, which is fantastic. And there again, it'll be interesting to see how they handle some of the things that are coming up, because there's some messed up stuff that we'll see how they end up handling it, because it's messed up, like beyond. But we'll see. And that was one of the best things about this episode, is not only did they end the season with this, incredible battle, and Eve dies, but then she's able to
cliffhangers left and right,
resurrect herself using her powers, and helps, basically takes the skin off of Conquest, and then Mark beats him to a pulp. But the
Conquest is still alive.
Well, that's what happened, is the episode ended, and then they gave us this basically epilogue of here's the things that we're working on for next season. Right. And so the epilogue was there was an army of Sequids. So if people remember, the Sequids are these alien things that attach to humans' brains, and then they can control them. Well, now there's an army of Sequid controlled humans amassing in some sewer somewhere. So they're coming back. So the Sequids are coming back. They had an alien spaceship comes up on Battle Beast as he's sitting there floating in space, frozen. They bring him into the spaceship and he wakes up. So we know Battle Beast is coming back. The technicians who helped Angstrom Levy, which basically are now they're using Angstrom Levy, use him to basically invade a new world. And so now they're trying to take over another world. And so we saw that. So Angstrom Levy's not done as well. And then Dark Blood, who we haven't seen since, so he's kind of like the Constantine of the Invincible comics. He's this demi-demon who has kind of helps out, but really sometimes he messes around in the dark world. He's in hell, and he's speaking to his boss, who's like this mega demon, and he wants to be restored as the ruler of the underworld. And Darkblood says, hey, there's a super powerful earthling that I can use to bring you back to power. So there's all this stuff they're teasing for next season.
Does he say earthling or surface dweller?
Earth being.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who do you think he's talking about? Mark?
I don't think he's talking about Mark. Yeah. So
Conquest?
No, there's stuff that happens in the books I don't want to spoil. So yeah, I mean, I pretty much know who he's talking about, but I don't want to spoil that.
Okay, I got you.
Going forward. So, but yeah, it was a great teaser of here's what we're working on for season 3.
Right.
So we know there's more stuff coming. And
that's great.
Then obviously there's the whole thing with Alan and Omni-Man now being freed, and we have the whole Viltrumite war, which we have to kind of get into as well. Which will probably be the main plot of the next season, I would believe. So
great.
We'll see. All right. Well, let's also talk about Daredevil Born Again. So on our last show, we had talked about the first 2 episodes that were released on release day, and we've now gone through episode 7. I won't, do a full summary of each episode. It would take us forever, but there were a couple of episodes. The first episode 3 was really about the trial of White Tiger. Matt had exposed his identity as White Tiger to the courtroom, which he was pretty upset about, but it ended up helping him get freed. So he was found innocent because everybody figured out that he was really helping people and not hurting people. He was found innocent in court, and then he was back on the streets that night as White Tiger, being his vigilante self, and got shot in the head by a cop who had a Punisher vest on.
Yeah.
So he's, we know that there's something going on with the cops and Punisher, which led us into the next episode where Matt found the bullet casing that was used to shoot White Tiger, and saw that there was a Punisher logo on it, and he went to confront Frank Castle about it. And they had a bit of a interaction. I won't say it was really a fight, but bit of an interaction. But it was great to see Frank back, and we know that Punisher's back, so that that was really kind of cool part of that episode.
That dialogue between Frank Castle and Matt Murdock was some of the best dialogue in Daredevil,
right?
And in any of the Daredevil series or any of even the Netflix Marvel series. I thought that was fantastic. I thought the acting was great. It was so impactful. I mean, just brilliant. I was floored.
Because Frank always thought that the ends justify the means.
Right.
I'm willing to go as far as it takes to, defeat evil or bring the bad guys to justice, and
They're
including
still
killing everybody.
yeah.
And Matt always felt that he was better than that.
Right.
Well, and then Frank kind of confronts him about what did you do to Bullseye? You threw him off a building, right?
Right.
And it's like, so
that's probably the first real thing you've done, you
right.
know. And that conflict, those two ideologies, that conversation of those two ideologies and so different, but yet they're so similar,
right,
is fascinating.
And that's what Frank was basically telling him. It was like, hey, we're more alike than you think we are, right?
So
and now you're in hiding.
Character.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's such a great character.
And I don't think we're done seeing him yet, right? And if we believe any of the behind the scenes kind of photos that we've seen of the filming of this first season, I do believe we see Frank Castle and Daredevil
Did you like the together. Accountant with Ben Affleck and John Bernthal?
Yeah.
Accountant 2's coming out.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
That's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
He's great in that too.
Well, and John Bernthal's in the movie with Remy Malek that just came out called where Remy Malek plays like this super smart CIA guy.
Oh, the amateur.
The amateur.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for
and he's a trained killer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks good too. I'll wait to stream that one, but yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm glad to see John Bernthal back. He's amazing. And again, I think we'll see him again before the end of the season. Episode 5, which you and I discussed, is really kind of a filler episode where there was a bank robbery. Matt happens to get caught up in this bank robbery as Matt Murdock, not Daredevil, but he helps thwart the bank robbery using his, skills, but he uses his blindness as kind of a way to, gain the trust of the robbers.
Super cool episode, very well shot. I like the story of it. It was a filler episode, people. I mean, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, but it was a great action-packed episode.
And the best part was we got Kamala's dad. And we got to hear all about how Miss Marvel's doing, and she's out in LA.
They're so
La La Land.
They're so desperate, and there's a lot of accounts on X that do the same thing. They're so desperate to keep her name still relevant, and her name out in the public and relevant and popularity. And it's like push. Great. Look, love the actress, great character, but not a lead character. The Marvel's movies showed that. So I just really, but still, I thought he was hilarious.
He's funny.
He's very funny.
He's
funny. I thought it was great. And I did like that show. It's a filler episode, but I liked it.
Yeah, it was good. And Matt, you can kind of see Matt being forced into using his skills to help people, even though he doesn't want to be Daredevil anymore.
Can't help himself.
Yeah.
He can't help himself. And I think that episode also answered that question, is like, can he stop? Can he stop being Daredevil? And the answer is no.
Yeah,
it's just part of him.
Which we found out in the following episode, which was this is the start of the Muse episode. We'd kind of been hearing a little bit about, and we've got a little teasers about the Muse character in previous episodes, but Muse in episode 6 became like the topic of conversation. The Mayor Fisk and everybody else was so concerned because all these people have gone missing. There's now the number of missing is like 85. And people they're finding out that this artist Muse is painting these murals on the walls, and the sanitation department that was trying to remove it said they had to use a special chemical because it was made with human blood. So we found out that he's not only been kidnapping these people, but he's been sucking the blood out of them so he can use it for his artwork.
Yeah.
Very disturbing. Well, then and was it Angela? Yeah, Angela Ayala, White Tiger's niece, who ends up becoming White Tiger in the comics, by the way. I'm not sure if that's where they're going with this, but she kind of decides to, hunt down this Muse person on her own, smart thing for a teenage girl to do. Ends up getting captured by him.
She's gutsy.
Well, he was going to remove those guts, and he, was basically
he started draining her blood.
Yeah, and then Matt just said, "Screw it." Angela's mom calls and say she's gone missing. I don't know where she is, and he's like, "All right, that's it." And he goes upstairs to the roof and unlocks his Daredevil costume and goes out and finds Muse's lair.
Some of that he felt a little obligated because he felt a little guilty about exposing White Tiger and who he was. And he felt a little bit guilty about what happened to him. And her conversation with him earlier in the episode kind of was like,
why aren't you doing more to stop this guy? Yeah. And
so I get that.
But that was a great battle. And the way that they shot this part. So at the same time that Daredevil was fighting Muse, Kingpin was in his basement. And Adam, I guess, is the guy that was sleeping with his ex-wife or his wife. He has been keeping him prisoner in this basement, and he basically lets him out of his cell and hands him an axe and says, "Okay, it's now it's even. Now it's even." And so they're having this fight, Muse and Daredevil, and then Kingpin and Adam. And the way that the screen is bouncing off, one person will hit somebody and the other one will hit somebody, and it goes back and forth between the two fights. Daredevil's able to stop Muse and rescue Angela and brings her back. And then, basically Kingpin beats the crap out of Adam. That's kind of what we see. But that's how that episode ended. And then the final episode we got, episode 7, was kind of like I don't know about you, and I know you just watched it yesterday, I believe, but it was the end of the Muse story. Quick summary: Muse was seeing Daredevil's girlfriend, Heather Glenn,
psychiatrist,
who's a psychiatrist, who's also the marriage counselor for Wilson Fisk and his wife, Vanessa.
Bizarre circle,
right?
She's a book writer, though, so that's how Muse kind of developed some of his.
Yeah, it was a guy named Bastian Cooper, and we find out that he studied Taekwondo, and there was this Taekwondo master that came to live with them, and then like a couple of years after he came to live with them, and he taught the kid Taekwondo only because his parents wanted him to learn it. He ended up killing him, killing the Taekwondo master. But that's, I guess, how he has some kind of fighting skills. But he basically admits to Heather that, I'm Muse, and that's who I am. And
he
freaks out like, oh my God. And he's like, oh yeah, you're gonna get killed. I'm gonna kill you. Daredevil, of course, swoops in to save the day, and they have a really good fight in her apartment building, or I guess it's her office.
Yeah.
But then, Heather ends up shooting Muse and killing him.
Yeah.
I know that there was a lot of feedback. You'd mentioned me. There's a lot of feedback online of how they've kind of misused the Muse character.
Well, they wasted him. They ended him too soon. He was really just kind of a secondary, and they were upset about that. Just like White Tiger. Like, what? White Tiger's gone now? That's a great character. Why would he be gone now?
Right.
And
in the comics, Muse was a villain for Daredevil that was around for a while.
Okay.
And was very difficult, and he was the way that they used him in the TV show is very different than the comic books. In the comic books, he was an Inhuman, and most of the kidnap victims were Inhumans as well. So he was kidnapping, and of course, they're not going to do Inhumans and cover Inhumans on the show or whatever.
Right.
But he was an Inhuman who had powers that he could dull people's senses. That was his superpower, and it was very difficult for. So it's kind of like how Doomsday is like, Superman's kryptonite. Like Muse was Daredevil's kryptonite, because every time he was in his proximity, his senses were dulled, and so he wasn't as sharp or as perceptive as he would be with all of his heightened senses as he has them. So they did kind of waste him a little bit. I think this goes back to the reshoots and rewrites they did for this series. I believe, and we didn't see Matt Murdock in his costume until the end of episode 6. Okay, so we went through 5 episodes with him not in the costume at all, except for the first episode a little bit. But then we didn't get him back in a costume until the end of episode 6. I think, as we had heard, which was reported earlier in the first version of the show, he wasn't going to be in costume in the first season,
but once
for the last episode.
Yeah.
And so now we're seeing, I think that they accelerated the Muse storyline a little bit, where this might have been building up over several episodes. And then finally at the end, he just has to do something. I think they accelerated getting to this point so that he would get in a costume earlier. And now we're going to move on to your point. Kingpin is the real big bad here.
Exactly. That was my comeback. And that was what I was trying to convince people, that Kingpin is the big bad. And to have multiple big bads probably is very confusing to the audience. You really want Kingpin moving forward as the big bad, for at least for Daredevil and perhaps maybe Spider-Man in the future. But yeah, very interesting. I thought Muse was a great character. Without getting too much into his comic book lore, I think they played him very well, and you never know. And this is what I said too. I said, you never know. Obviously, the daughter of White Tiger could become the new White Tiger. Muse, there could always be copycat Muse
who knows?
killers. So they're not done.
But I think, one of the biggest things that's happened in the last few episodes of this series is that Kingpin has decided that he is doubling down on his anti-vigilante platform that he ran on. And, the briefing of when the cops told him that they saw Daredevil, he showed up and he was pissed. He was so mad. And he's like, because they had that little agreement.
Yeah.
You keep your nose clean. I won't be Daredevil as long as we're both okay, And, so Kingpin's pissed. And he created this anti-vigilante task force, basically took the worst of the worst cops who are all
the
corrupt,
dirty cops,
and created this brand new task force that has no safeguards. They can do whatever they want to.
Those cops are probably the Punisher cops, the crew.
Well, we know they are.
Yeah.
We've seen them with the tattoos and everything else, right? So, and again, that at the end of this episode 7, Muse gets killed by Heather Glenn, but and Daredevil helped save her.
Yeah.
And the one cop was like, "Oh yeah, Daredevil was here," and they're like, "Well, are you sure? Did you see?" Well, we know he was here, and they're like, "No, he was never here."
Right.
And they took full credit for stopping Muse. The task force did. They didn't even acknowledge that Daredevil was even around.
Fisk manufactured that story, and because it benefited him. Like, I'm doing what I promised to do when you elected me, and that is get rid of these people.
So one aside, you mentioned this, and I wanted to report this as well. So Vincent D'Onofrio was on a podcast this week, and he confirmed that Marvel does not own the movie rights to Kingpin. They're only allowed to use his character in TV.
Right.
And Sony owns the rights to Kingpin, very similar to the Spider-Man rights for that are shared between Marvel and Sony. That's why Marvel's able to freely do Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man television series, and they don't have to do anything with Sony, but they have to get Sony's blessing to use Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man. They would have to do the same thing if they wanted to put Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin in any movie or anything with Spider-Man. They would need Sony's permission, and who knows?
He was referring to Spider-Man 4 because there's a lot of talk. Good?
I think we're good.
There was a lot of talk of him being in Spider-Man 4 and being a villain in Spider-Man 4, and he addressed it and said that the naming rights and the rights of that character only are for TV. And the movie
that Sony would have to sign off on it, similar to what they did with Spider-Man. And again, if it was in their benefit, they would do that, right? I mean, but I believe Marvel has the rights to Vincent D'Onofrio and his version of Kingpin for TV. So if they wanted to use him in a movie, like, they would probably need to get Marvel's permission to do that, right? So really weird. But hey, we've got episode 8 coming out this week, and again, I look forward to watching this every week. It's been very
9 total episodes for the Daredevil Born Again series, and looking forward to every one of them. Yeah, it's really good.
Really good. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's on Disney Plus. It's really, really well done.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into some of the news, and there's been a ton of things. We had this past week, we had Cinemacon, and people might wonder, what is Cinemacon? Well, we have the Comic Cons, which are definitely more focused on comic book fans, anime fans. It's the fan-based, fan type of conference.
Correct.
Cinemacon is for theater owners.
Right.
So,
industry people.
Right. So Regal, AMC, Cinemark, the companies that run movie theaters around the country
the theater owners.
Theater owners. So they go to the Cinemacon, and it's basically an opportunity for all of the studios, and it's not just Disney. There's Disney, Sony,
Universal,
Universal,
Warner Brothers.
DC, Warner Brothers is there. So they're all there, promoting what they're bringing to the theaters here in the next year. Basically, it's covering most of what's going to be happening in the next
theater
year.
owners hyped up about what's going to be in their theaters and
how they can make money.
Right. No question.
Right. And they talk about all the promotions they're going to do. All, if you've ever walked into a movie theater, they have all these, standing billboards and 3D things that they put in theaters to promote movies. And they talk about how they're going to be doing that. It's a really big deal for these theater owners. Well, the studios have used this as an opportunity to kind of announce some things and show some things off that they want people to get excited about.
But you notice it's not as much as Comic-Con.
No,
like no future projects were announced.
Different audience.
Yeah, it was more of what's happening this year in the near future.
Right.
So interesting.
Right. So in regard to the comic book media style of things, we won't cover off on other things that were reported there. DC was there, or Warner Bros. Was there, and James Gunn did show some extended footage of the teaser trailer we've already gotten for Superman.
Yeah. Brilliant. I liked it a lot. Have you ever noticed the Snyder heads and how adamant they are about hating everything James Gunn? I mean, it's just incredible. Like, just lies that they're putting out there. And I love Snyder. I thought he did great. Man of Steel is one of my favorite all-time movies. One of my favorite comic book movies of all time is Man of Steel.
We'll both admit Batman v Superman was a step down from Man of Steel.
A little bit.
And Justice League was a step down from Batman v Superman. I mean, it was a
big disappointment. Like the Snyder cut.
But it was still a disappointment.
For me, no, it wasn't. I thought the world that he was building, if he could expand on that, it might have been great.
Yeah.
But people loved it. Like, people just obsessed with it. Don't like change. Don't want it to change. And it was incredible that they just hated this. And it's like, come on, give them a chance,
Yeah.
And then fake trending fire gun was all over X. And I'm like, wait a minute. That's not trending. I looked it up, but people were posting.
Yeah.
It's trending. It's not trending.
Yeah, and the scene that was shown was really, we saw in the teaser trailer, Superman, kind of crash lands in the Arctic where the Fortress of Solitude is, and his dog has to help him get back because he's so injured, and there's an extended scene of the dog, and and then the dog drags him back to the
typical
fortress.
Dog, unruly dog, jumping on him, trying to play. He wants to play just like a dog would want to, and people were so upset that he was jumping on him and it was hurting him. I was like, well, he's kind of been injured. He's kind of been, but Superman doesn't get injured. I'm like, well, Henry Cavill got injured in Snyder's thing. He kind of did the same thing, and they're just so obsessed about not drawing parallels between what has happened for Superman and what is going to happen to Superman. And
well, it was. I thought it was interesting in that we found out that the Fortress of Solitude is there. It's managed by this group of androids or robots or whatever you want to call them, that are kind of managing the Fortress of Solitude for Superman, and they help heal him. They have a they can see he's injured, and then he's bruised up and hurt, and they have a
broken bones, ruptured spleen.
They have a magnifying glass on the Fortress of Solitude that they're able to turn the Fortress of Solitude towards the sun and use the sun's rays to help heal Superman. And it was like, people were saying it was hurting him. I think it was so it was irradiating with the yellow sun energy so much that it was like, shock to his system more than it was like painful.
Yeah. I mean, if you remember when Henry Cavill was going up into the world change machine, the Terra changer, the world change machine, and he was flying up into that, he was screaming like that too. I think it was really just that kind of a shock, and people, it made it more dramatic. And we're talking about movies. So it's fiction.
Well,
So,
and there have been some early screenings of this movie already, and reviews have been favorable.
mhm.
They're not like some of the other early screenings we've heard for some of the other movies. They've been favorable. One of they're obviously not allowed to give away too much when they go to these screenings, but some of the feedback that's come out online is that this movie is more comedic in tone than they thought it would be.
Yeah.
And that is right up James Gunn's alley.
Of course.
Have you watched any of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies? That's what he does, right? There's some seriousness and a serious plot and serious situations, but there's comedy that underlines
If you think it's not going to pull on your heartstrings, you're mistaken.
Right.
Because he knows how to effectively bring in some kind of emotional tie to these characters. And yeah, it's going to be emotional.
I think that's what he does very well.
Does great.
He basically
jumps back and forth.
People emotionally invest. I mean, who didn't like tear up when Rocket was assumed dead?
No question.
Right.
Yeah, that absolutely. I love how bright it is. The colors are bright.
Yeah.
It's a completely different palette than what we've seen with the Snyderverse. Not anything against the Snyderverse,
but it was a very dark.
It was darker.
Yeah,
even
which is very Zack Snyder.
Which is very Zack. Absolutely, it's like 300-ish.
Yeah,
yeah.
Another thing that came out during Cinemacon was Sony officially announced that they are delaying Beyond the Spider-Verse, the follow-up to
animated,
the animated follow-up to Across the Spider-Verse, which did very well. And Into the Spider-Verse did amazingly well. This is highly anticipated. We had heard some things behind the scenes that they had to go through some massive rewrites. And we know how long animation takes to begin with. And so when they redo the script, it just sets animation even further back. So this movie is not coming out until late 2027 now.
They had a couple of stills of the animation, and it is so stylized. It reminds me of a Japanese anime type of high-end Japanese anime type of.
They did
like
that.
It's artwork.
In the second movie, they did a little bit of that. Yeah.
And I think that's people were so impressed by that. I think that's another reason why they're going to retool it. It might not have a lot to do with the storyline itself, but the animation and retooling that and the voiceovers and stuff need to be redone.
But people were very hopeful this movie would come out next year. They did confirm, no, it's going to be 2027. So
and that's a long way away.
It is. But again, animation just takes, especially that quality of animation just takes a lot. And it wouldn't surprise me if the voice acting is done so early, because the animation just centers around what the voice actors have done. So all right, so we did see that Marvel officially canceled the Blade movie and removed it from its upcoming movies slate. Not a surprise to either of us. There are still rumors out there that they have identified a new director, they have a script they really like, that Mahershala Ali is still attached to the project.
Now it's all about timing. Like, where does this movie fit in the scheme of things when they're trying to connect everything with Doomsday and Secret Wars?
And that's, I think, what's end up happening is that the delays, had this movie come out last October, as it was originally scheduled to come out, they would have been able to fit Blade and everything that Blade's doing, and even maybe some other ancillary characters around Blade, into the Secret Wars plan. But now it's so late. It's like, even if they were to introduce this character that was very strange, and how it fits into the grand scheme of what's going on at Marvel would have been really weird.
Do you Black Panther him?
Recast him?
No.
What do you mean by Black Panther?
Bring him in sideways before his own.
No, I don't think they will. Okay. I think they'll. Well, I don't think they'll bring him in Secret Wars, if that's what you're alluding to. I think we will not see Blade. I think once Secret Wars is done, we've heard that this is going to be a massive reboot for the MCU. They're going to recast some people. They're going to bring in new characters. It's going to be the Mutant Saga, all this other stuff that, they haven't announced any of the projects after Secret Wars yet, but we believe that the direction they're moving in is they're going to focus on relaunching the X-Men franchise, building stories around most of the mutants that they now have access to. And I think that's a great opportunity for them to either do the Blade movie or do a Midnight Suns and bring Blade in kind of sideways. And then if he is a hit, then do his own movie. So
do you think Mahershala Ali will still be attached to it?
Why not? I mean, they paid him a bag of money just for his name to be attached to this project.
How old is he?
Probably mid-30s, right?
Really?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know, mid
I feel
to
he's
late
older
30s.
than that.
Really, you think he's in his 40s? It's
I
possible.
think he's late 40s, maybe 50 already.
Totally possible.
Yeah.
I have no idea. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. You know, at this point in time, Wesley Snipes could come back. Who knows, right? Well, that is one thing. I would not be
one blade.
I would not be shocked to see Wesley Snipes in Secret Wars at all. Like that would, you know, lead me to believe that it's happening. But anyway, very sad state of affairs for this movie. I mean, you and I both 51 years old. There we go.
51 years old. So he's, you know, 4 more years, he'll be 55.
Yeah.
I know I couldn't do it, and I'm 35.
Yeah. So yeah, who knows? I guess maybe his attachment to this project is waning. So yeah, because if he's in his mid 50s by the time this movie gets made, you know, how much does he want to do?
He's such a great actor, though. And look at Robert Downey Jr. Look at
Robert Downey Jr. is in his 60s. He's fine.
Hugh. Look at Hugh.
Hugh Jackman's 60, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're up there and they're still killing it.
Yeah.
So could happen.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. So we also, the Cinemacon attendees during the Disney presentation were shown a new I don't know if we officially call it a trailer. Maybe it is a trailer, the one that we're expecting that hasn't come. For Fantastic Four, it showed the things that came out of this trailer, which were very revealing to those people that attended.
Sue's pregnant.
Sue Storm is pregnant.
Yep.
Right. And we believed that, you know, there was many rumors that she was going to be pregnant in this movie, and that Franklin Richards was going to be introduced in this movie, and that the birth of Franklin Richards was what kind of got the attention of Galactus. And that was the other thing in this trailer, is that we saw the Shalabal version of the Silver Surfer announcing the arrival of Galactus.
I love how you're so respectful of me. You're so respectful and you're so kind and you're so good to me. The fact that you said the Shalabal version of the Silver Surfer was very nice, because just calling the Silver Surfer is upsetting to me. The Shalabal version of the Silver Surfer, another herald of Galactus. Thank you.
From another alternate universe.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And there was very similar to what they do. I think it was Empire Magazine gets like behind the scenes access to certain films when they're promoting the films, and so Marvel gave them special access to Fantastic Four. There was a couple of photos from the set in the Empire Magazine, but you know, Matt Shakman, basically the director of the movie, did confirm this isn't a completely alternate universe. There are no other superheroes here. It's just the Fantastic Four. They were
very clear.
Normal astronauts.
You're not going to see a cameo by Iron Man.
Right.
It's just us.
Right.
Yeah.
But, you know, to confirm that they were astronauts first, and they were famous because they were astronauts. Mm-hmm. So they were just like Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were famous, you know, back in the 60s. The Fantastic Four were famous because they were astronauts, and then they came back with superpowers. And so they were famous and they had powers. Yeah. Right. And so, but he said it was freeing to some aspects that, you know, they didn't have to worry about how to connect it to the rest of the MCU, and they could just tell their own story.
Right.
There's things that happen in this movie that connected to the MCU, we believe.
No question.
But that'll be part of the plot of the movie.
And we know they're going to be in
Secret Wars and Doomsday
for sure. Yeah, they were announced.
Yeah. So great. That I'm sure. And again, we were expecting a trailer for Fantastic Four to be released on April 4th, which was 4/4, and so there was all these rumors out there that they were going to release a trailer, which was like the day after the Disney panel at Cinemacon, and nothing happened.
Yeah,
so
a little upsetting, but we will see it. I feel
it's going to happen the week before Thunderbolts comes out.
That way it'll be in the theater.
They'll release the trailer online the week before Thunderbolts, and we'll see it in the theaters with Thunderbolts. Yeah. And so Thunderbolts comes out May 2nd. So look at the last week of April. That just makes all the sense in the world.
That's great. I'm glad you looked into your crystal ball and discovered that.
Yeah. Well, they've demonstrated a pattern, right? So we can probably
assume connecting the dots.
Right. So let's see. Let's go into our topic of the week this week.
Sure, let's get moving.
This is brought to us by our friends over at Studio G.
Man Band. Corn on the cob.
Thanks, Studio G, and we always link their page in our show notes, so please go check them out and support them because they support us. There was a big announcement by Marvel, a big casting announcement for Avengers Doomsday, and this was done kind of surprisingly. It wasn't announced ahead of time. It wasn't something that anybody knew about. All of a sudden, there was a live stream on the Marvel YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And people started showing up. Like, what's right. It basically just said big announcement.
Yeah.
And people showed up, and then
streaming starting now.
Right. And then the first thing that showed up was a director's chair that had the name Chris Hemsworth on it.
Yeah.
And then 15 minutes later, they panned over to another director's chair who had another name on it.
The music came up. The camera started slowly panning to another chair. It was
painful.
It was painful. But if you looked at the Fantastic Four reveal and that little show and the host for that show and all of that and the way they announced and the way they did that trailer and how painful that was, you knew something was coming. But before you start reading all the names, after we were angry and stuff, first of all, everybody was talking about it 5 or 6 days after. It was
brilliant.
The talk of the town, marketing brilliance. And there were 10 million people that were signed, that watched that stream, 10 million people that were
simultaneously
on the stream, and 275 million people came in and out. So there was
a peak audience of 10 million.
Yes.
And
at the same time,
250 million unique visitors came to that live stream.
Crazy.
It was the most watched live stream in YouTube history.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as you and I and everybody else was complaining about it at the time it was happening, it was brilliant marketing on Marvel.
Unbelievable. Brilliant.
And it took, 2.5, 3 hours or something like that to get through all the names.
Oh,
I could do the math real quick. 1, 2.
They cut it down from 15. At one point, it was 9 minutes. Then it was 12 minutes.
Yeah.
It never was really consistent at 15. It kind of varied a little bit. So
I want to say it was 3 hours.
Well, I would say it was probably around 3 hours, but people were thinking that there were 50. They were going to announce 50 characters at 15 minutes apiece. It was going to be 5.5 hours.
Yeah, right. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we got a cast listing for Avengers Doomsday. They ultimately, partway through the live stream, they changed the title of the live stream to say Avengers Doomsday casting announcement. So we all knew that this is what this was.
Yeah.
Let's go over the names, because I think who was announced says a lot about many things, which we'll talk about. Who wasn't announced also says a lot of things.
Agree.
And some we can assume we
can speculate
a little bit about that. But let's talk about the announcement. So first was Chris Hemsworth. We know Thor's coming back for Avengers Doomsday.
Great.
Vanessa Kirby, the Invisible Woman, Fantastic Four member. She's going to be in the movie. Anthony Mackie, Sam Wilson, Captain America. He's in. Sebastian Stan, Bucky. He's in.
How did you feel about the Thunderbolt cast being announced?
I want to get there.
Okay.
So let's go through the list, and then we'll talk about what all this stuff means.
Got it.
Letitia Wright, Shuri. Paul Rudd, Ant-Man. Wyatt Russell, U.S. Agent from Thunderbolts as well. Tinoch Huerta Meja from Namor from the last Panther 2 is in. Eben Moss-Bacharach, The Thing. Simu Liu, Shang-Chi. Haven't seen him in a while. He's in. Florence Pugh. Yelena Belova, she's in. Kelsey Grammer, Beast. So this was the huge one. Oh my God.
Yeah, big.
They're bringing back the original X-Men cast, and people were now freaking out.
Holy shit. Now people are dialed in. And I think at this point it jumped from 4 million to 8 million.
Yeah. Kelsey Grammer, Beast. Louis Pullman, Bob or Sentry, we'll find out, right?
Or the Void, yeah.
Yeah, he's in. Danny Ramirez, the Falcon. Joseph Quinn, Human Torch. David Harbour, Red Guardian.
Yep.
Winston Duke, M'Baku, he's in.
Yep.
Hannah John Common, Ghost, she's in. And then Tom Hiddleston as Loki got announced.
How great was that?
And everybody freaked out when that happened.
Yeah.
They're like, Loki's back. He's back. He's back.
He's back.
So we'll see how he gets brought in, what version of Loki it is, from where, we'll figure that all out. Then the big ones came. Patrick Stewart, Professor X, Ian McKellen, Magneto, Alan Cummings coming back as Nightcrawler.
Great.
Rebecca Romaine is coming back as
Mystique.
Mystique. James Marsden's coming back as Cyclops.
Huge.
And then Channing Tatum.
As
And
Gambit.
that was like just lit everybody on fire.
Again.
It was crazy.
And anybody at this point, because you've been on there, I wasn't. I was in and out, and I was just, checking my phone every once in a while. I didn't watch the whole thing, but when that hit, people were losing their mind.
Yeah, it was insane. And then Pedro Pascal, Mr. Fantastic, and then ultimately what ended up happening is you see this person walking down past all the chairs.
It was like a great shot of all the chairs lined up, and there was one more chair.
And there's one person walking down past all of them.
Blurred.
RDJ, he sits down in his chair and he puts his fingers to his mouth and says, shh, right? So really cool, really cool. So let's talk about, you alluded to this. Let's talk about what the people that were announced in this casting announcement tell us about some of the things we already know.
Right.
We know the Fantastic Four are going to be part of this movie. How they're part of it? Are they part of the MCU? Are they coming in sideways from their universe because of Doom? Like, we don't know anything. We'll find out in the Fantastic Four movie, but we know they're going to be part of this project.
For me, hearing those names, I'm like, yes, none of them die.
Right. Oh, of course. Right. But speaking of, this gives us a lot of clues as to the outcome of the Thunderbolts movie.
Correct.
We anticipated that there may be a couple of strategic losses amongst the Thunderbolts in that movie.
Agreed.
And to find out that the entire cast, with one exception, which is the most obvious exception ever, they're back.
Yeah.
They're all back. So they all survived the movie somehow, some way, including Sentry.
Correct.
And they're going to be part of this movie.
Yes.
Other big questions are, this gives us this cast also tells us who's going to make up the team. So we know, we've been told that the Avengers, the original X-Men, and we know which original X-Men are going to be part of this movie now, right? We've got Professor X, Magneto, Mystique, Cyclops, Nightcrawler, Beast. There's some we haven't heard about, but those are the ones.
Hugh Jackman, no Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah. Again, we know these, and Channing Tatum, so we know which members of the X-Men will be in this movie, at least most of them. And we understand that the X-Men, the Avengers, and the Fantastic Four will be fighting Doom in this movie, and they may be fighting each other in this movie, right? I brought my X-Men versus Avengers comic book here. It's happened before, but they will be facing off against each other. We believe that they may be an incursion, and the X-Men universe, it has an incursion with the MCU, and the Avengers are fighting the X-Men until they figure out who the real bad is, and then they team up together to fight against Dr. Doom and all this other stuff. But it'll be interesting to see who makes up the Avengers. Like, who are the Avengers now, right? We've always, like, and this was something that was alluded to in the Captain America movie recently. The president wanted Sam Wilson to build a new Avengers team. Did that happen?
Not in that movie.
Not in that movie, but did it happen ever? Maybe.
Right.
The only members we know that could be a member of the Avengers would be Anthony Mackie's version of Sam Wilson, the Falcon, right? We've got
Shuri's Black Panther.
Potentially, right? We've got, and the Wakandans, which we could probably leave the Wakandans on their own end. They could be fighting just as Wakandans, right? Yeah. They don't need to be part of the Avengers,
right?
But they could just be the Wakandans, right? But then we've got, Shang-Chi, which, again, we haven't seen Shang-Chi in a long time. So for him to be part of the Avengers or be brought onto the Avengers team would be super cool.
Always said he'd be a better leader than Anthony Mackie.
But do the Thunderbolts now, are they still their own team? Are they still a team?
Right.
Are they their own team? Are they the government's team? Or are they now part of the Avengers?
Right.
Great question.
Dark Avengers, Thunderbolts.
Right. Great.
Or the Avengers.
Right. Great question.
Right.
How does Sentry / Bob fit into this mix? Right. Great question.
Yep.
It just opened up so many questions that and again, how they decide to bring all these characters together is probably the most interesting part. But as we discussed, there were a lot of names that have been rumored to be attached to this project that were not announced. Right.
And the rumor is that they first contractually, they haven't nailed down the people that they want to. Scheduling issues for this, for some of the characters that they want, are still being worked out, things like that.
So it's safe to assume that everybody that was announced is contractually
yes,
they're
to make that
under
kind of announcement.
contract.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and committed to it. So anybody who was announced is in.
Right.
In it to win it. But the rest of them.
So here's an example. We know that Haley Atwell is now part of Doomsday and Secret Wars because her agent confirmed that he negotiated the contract for Doomsday and Secret Wars for her to be in those two films. She was not announced.
No.
But is that because she's playing Captain Carter and they're holding it back? Or is it because she's just playing Peggy Carter and going to be, involved in that aspect? We don't know, but we know she's part of the project now. And there may be no reason she needs her own chair. Who knows, right? We don't want to know that. But no Spider-Man.
Nope.
No Doctor Strange.
And I thought we knew that Tom Holland was going to be a part of this, because
that was part of the sharing agreement that Sony and Marvel signed together, that he would have his own solo film and two other Avengers films or collaboration.
Because the word on the street was he had a lot of scheduling conflicts with the Odyssey that he's filming now.
Yeah.
And Doomsday which is starting to film today or tomorrow, right? It's very soon. So there was a lot of scheduling conflicts, and they had even said, well, some of Tom Holland's scenes will be a double in
they'll
full costume.
They'll use his stuntman, his body double stuntman, to film some of his
scenes and do voiceovers when he's available.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, but no announcement about him, no announcement about Benedict Cumberbatch and Doctor Strange, and he's got to be involved to some extent at some point in time,
based on what the comics, right? Based on his involvement in the comics and how
the story.
The story.
One interesting thing is that
who else do you think should be in it and they didn't announce?
Well, Deadpool and Wolverine are probably the other two biggest names out there that were rumored to be part of Secret Wars, at least. Chris Evans has been signed by Marvel to come back in some role, in some capacity. We don't know what version of Captain America, or if he is going to even be a Captain America, but we hear he's coming back. No Chris Evans.
Bruce Banner.
Yep. No Mark Ruffalo. No
Harrison Ford.
Yeah, well, we don't know anything about Harrison Ford and his version of the Red Hulk, or just President Ross, right? What about?
There's a big one.
Scarlett Johansson.
Exactly. Scarlett Johansson and Isaac.
Yeah.
Oscar Isaac.
Well, yeah, but they may save him for Secret Wars, though.
Either Secret Wars or the Blade movie or Midnight Suns.
Yeah, who knows what they're going to do. I wouldn't.
He was to be honest, he's just a favorite character.
What about Ms. Marvel? What about?
Stop it. Stop it.
So
what about Iron Fist?
Yeah, but I mean, and that's the other thing that Daredevil and all the other we'll say Netflix versions of their characters have not been announced to be part of these films at all. I think it says a couple things. So Robert Downey Jr. went out on Twitter right after this big event and say, "Wow, what a great cast. This has to be it, right?" And Marvel replied, "There's always room for more."
Yes.
And so they alluded to the fact that this is not a complete cast listing for Avengers Doomsday.
And it makes sense to keep some of it a secret. Like, how great would it be to show up in the theater, sitting in the chair, shoving our faces with popcorn and chocolate.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, huge.
If we would have known Channing Tatum was in Deadpool and Wolverine, we would have been disappointed that we knew it.
Or even Chris Evans. I didn't know Chris Evans was in that.
Exactly. We would have been disappointed.
It's great.
So look, but I think part of this casting announcement was done, the way it was done and why it was done was because they are filming now. They started filming. Kevin Feige called in from the set of Avengers Doomsday to Cinemacon to give his report. So they are already filming. There are going to be set leaks. There are going to be, photos from the set leaked. And we're going to see people. And if the people we're seeing were not announced, or if they hadn't done this casting announcement, we started seeing people, we would have been upset. Well, now when we see Chris Hemsworth in a Thor outfit, we're, Thor's back. Well, of course we knew he's back. He's back. So I think that's part of it. The other part of it is, to your point, Titanium, again, the rumors and speculation we've seen out there, for not necessarily from people in the know, but just people who are smart and maybe some people that know a little bit, that Dr. Doom is building his own team.
Right.
And he's putting together his own team of supervillains or whatever. And we're hearing that maybe it's an evil version of Captain America, right? Maybe it's an evil version of Black Widow. Maybe a lot of the original Avengers are going to be alternate versions of those characters that Dr. Doom has manipulated to be part of his team. And that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Like how does Dr. Doom single-handedly defeat all of these characters? I mean, that's hard to believe, even as powerful as Dr. Doom is.
Right.
How does he defeat all of them collectively? So he's got to have somebody on his side that's helping him win those battles, right? Just like, Thanos had his, secret order, right? He's got some cadre of some characters, and who they are and what versions of those characters they are is all the great stuff, right?
Yeah,
maybe that's stuff that they want to hold back.
They should. They should.
But I wouldn't be surprised, to your point, that maybe later down the road we do find out that Tom Holland's involved. We do find out that Benedict Cumberbatch is involved. The other thing you and I were talking about the other night, Sony did announce that Spider-Man 4 Brand New Day is coming out July 31st, 2026, which is basically 2.5 months after Avengers Doomsday comes out.
Right.
So that movie is coming out after Doomsday. If Spider-Man is involved in Doomsday, he survives to be part of his own movie, or maybe his own movie is simultaneously happening at the same time the events of Doomsday is happening, and there's kind of a tie-in or a crossover there or something.
That'd be cool.
Like we see something happen with Spider-Man in Doomsday, and to see what really happened, we'd have to watch his movie and find out what ended up happening there, right? And maybe that's the part of that. So that was a big announcement by Sony. Brand New Day is the name of the title of the movie. We know nothing about the plot. We know nothing about the characters. The only other actor we know that's been attached to that project is the young redheaded actress from Stranger Things.
Singer, yeah.
She's been attached to that project.
We remember that she's playing Jackpot.
We know nothing.
Nobody.
Yeah, we know.
And
nothing.
they're casting an Asian Asian American male between the age of 30 and 50, assumed to be Mr. Negative.
Yeah, and that would make sense to bring in some other Spider-Man villains. But again, we don't know anything about that movie, but we know it's happening. And so whether Tom Holland officially gets attached to Doomsday or not, yet to be seen, but I wouldn't be surprised. And again, they're not going to be able to keep this under wraps for long.
All of it, but I really hope that they keep some of it.
Well, they were able to do it with Deadpool and Wolverine, for the most part. Right. And there were a ton of super surprises in that movie that none of us heard about.
Think about that, Deadpool and Wolverine, when set photos leaked of Cyclops in his comic book accurate suit in the void during that whole period. There were several shots of,
and maybe it was like a
cut. It was to throw people off. They knew these leaked photos were coming from that outside set, and they started to throw in characters that weren't going to be a part of it, which I thought was really evil, and disappointing. But
and it's not beyond Marvel to lead us in one direction and pull the rug out from under us, and
I hope so, because the one of my favorite things about Deadpool Wolverine was it as good as everybody says it was? Maybe not, but for me it was, because of the excitement of not knowing, because of the reveals in that movie was just spectacular. Blade, had no idea he was in it. Wesley Snipes, it was great.
Yeah,
I mean, those type of X-23 coming out of nowhere. I didn't know any of that.
That was all great. And those are some other characters. Like, think about all of those characters in that movie. We know Channing Tatum's back, but what about Blade? What about Elektra? What about X-23? What about Wolverine? What about Deadpool? We know nothing about them. And again, if the Russos are kind of following a very similar script to what they did with Infinity War and Endgame, you would venture to believe that Doomsday is all about establishing Dr. Doom as this
big bad,
massive threat
with Kang. Huge mistake.
Massive threat. Ultimately, he probably wins out at the end of this movie, becomes God and Emperor Doom, like the Secret Wars comics, where he ended up, and he creates Battle World. And then at that point in time, maybe some of the other heroes that weren't involved in Doomsday need to help fix things and save things, right? So we know nothing. And again, that's part of the excitement of this.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody, since the Russos were attached to this project, everybody's excitement level is like through the roof.
Yeah,
Knowing
I
that they're
think
going to
so.
do it justice.
Well, they even said themselves, we would not undertake this huge undertaking. We would not do it if we didn't feel like we had a great story to tell.
And we're getting paid a lot of money.
And they're getting paid a ton of money. Now, let me ask you this, Professor, real quick before we jump off. Do you think that Secret Wars should be a two-parter?
No. God, no. I hope not. I mean, if they're going to give us Doomsday, which is going to be a long movie, I bet you that movie's probably, I mean,
3 hours?
look at all these characters.
Yeah.
I mean, how do they go through all this story?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's going to be 2.5 hours at least.
At least.
And then they're going to give us 5 hours more of movies, because, Infinity War and Doomsday was almost, Infinity War and Endgame was almost 3 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope not. I think that they want Secret Wars to be a new beginning for the MCU. And to delay that another year means that they have to push all the other new things they want to do out for another year.
Right.
And we mentioned that the only other movie we know that's coming out between Doomsday and Secret Wars is the Spider-Man movie in July.
Yep.
There's nothing. So we would get Doomsday, Spider-Man, and then nothing again until the following May.
2027.
I have a hard time believing no other Marvel movies are coming out between Spider-Man and Secret Wars. I have to believe that something's going to be announced for the fall of 2026 or February of 2027, which are the typical spots that we see Marvel have. And we know there are empty spots available there, whether it's Doctor Strange 3, Shang-Chi 2, Thor 4.
This year for Marvel, right?
No, we have 3. We had Captain America, Thunderbolts, and Fantastic Four.
Wasn't counting Captain America.
Right. No, we had 3. But
3.
I just don't think that they would do that. I think, again, there's been rumors and speculation out there that Doctor Strange 3.
No. I mean,
and it's possible that Doctor Strange is not part of Doomsday.
I'm on your team on that. I agree with you.
If Doctor Strange, if we saw the end of Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness, Clea shows up, there's been an incursion in the negative zone, and you have to, fix this.
Right.
And they go off together.
Right.
It would explain why he's not part of Doomsday if he's off doing that.
Right.
And maybe that movie answers that question of what he has to take care of there. And then when he comes back, he's like, oh, what just happened?
Right.
My world is gone. Or, there's been another incursion or whatever. So that would be a very speculative movie to come out between Spider-Man and Secret Wars. The other one that's heavily rumored out there, which we think is coming, is Thor 4 with Hercules. Maybe, but that might be a post Secret Wars thing.
Yeah. I don't see
Who
that
knows?
pulling in big dollars or putting
and it's got to
X's in
fit into
seats.
the story somehow.
Yeah, somehow.
It's got to
doesn't make
fit
sense.
into the story somehow,
You
right?
can't just take an after credit scene and make it some kind of big movie.
Right.
Yeah.
It's got, but it also has to fit into what they're doing with Secret Wars. So if it doesn't, why are they doing it?
Makes more sense for Doctor Strange and Clea to come back after they jump through into the.
Yeah, I mean, you think about what they did between Infinity War and Endgame. We had Infinity War, and then we had Ant-Man and the Wasp, the first one, and that was really showed what happened to Scott Lang,
right,
to make him miss the events of Infinity War. Like, where was he? What happened? And that was kind of like this was all happening while Infinity War is happening. Thanos snaps his fingers and Scott Lang's stuck in the quantum realm.
Right.
That was really, really, really well done and fit into the story.
Yeah.
Right. And then we got Captain Marvel, which she had been teased at the end of Infinity War, but that was telling her story of like who she is and what ended up happening to her, and why if the Thanos' snap happened, where was she and why wasn't she involved? Well, she was off world. And we got the post-credit scene of Nick Fury, with the pager and everything. Right. So anyway,
I like it. I think your theory is solid.
Yeah. Well, and it just makes, what's going to happen later this year with Comic-Con and everything else. I mean, Comic-Con's going to be big because the Fantastic Four is coming out that weekend, but what's happening momentum wise with their storytelling, they have a lot of story to tell and a lot of things to get us excited about. I would not be shocked. I would be really shocked if we got a trailer, even a teaser for Doomsday by Comic-Con. That's way too early. I mean, they just started filming and it's April. I mean, we're talking about 2 months of filming. You're gonna be able to do a teaser.
Yeah.
Maybe some clips behind the scenes, who knows? But I believe by the end of the year, kind of September, October timeframe, we'll get a trailer for this movie to get us hyped up for it.
Excellent. All right, Professor, the bell is rung. School's over.
All right, well, that's it for us this week. We'll be back next week. More Super Talk. To get in touch with us on social media, hit us up via email, supertalkpodcast@outlook.com, or at supertalkpod on Twitter. Until then, stay super, everyone.
Corner of the man.